Definitely.
Okay, there's my plug. I think we should open it up to questions. We've got a little while, and you don't need to ask about any of the things that our panelists have already spoken about, or you can ask for clarification, or pretty much anything. So who's our first questioner?
This is for Camille. So what kinds of jobs in DC does Pearson most frequently hire for, or, you know, I know you guys are all over the country and all over the globe, but specifically in DC, what are the positions and opportunities?
So honestly, our DC office is the hub of our DC office is the hub of where we have a lot of our tutoring business. So our U.S. headquarters is in Upper Saddle River. So the bulk of Pearson jobs, honestly, are going to be in New Jersey, New York. They are going to be spread out around the country, but in this particular area, unless you're specifically working in sales, where we do have sales reps working in this area, we have content specialists working in the area with schools. Aside from content and sales positions and the tutoring company, there aren't a lot of opportunities, honestly. I mean, I can just throw out quickly a couple of computer programs that we would be looking for, but if there's any way that you can maybe get HTML or C++ or Java experience as an entry-level candidate coming in, or even a candidate with prior experience, those would be the technical skills that we would be looking for. But I don't know if anyone else would like to add.
What I'd say is that you hear a lot about digital natives. So when I get a resume that I'm interested in, the first thing I do is I look on LinkedIn. And that's my first clue. If you're not on LinkedIn, that's worrying. I'll Google. If I see you've got a blog, that's pretty interesting. I'll look at the quality of the blog. I'm looking not just what's written on it, but is it nicely laid out? Is there any HTML coding? Once you get beyond that stage, I'm looking for practical experience of being able to manipulate content online. So that would be Excel skills, or Microsoft Access, or Relational Database Manager. It sounds like it's digital, but really it's actually more analytical, technical skills. So, you know, if you've got HTML, that's useful. But what I'm more interested in is if you're looking at a web page and there's a problem in it, do you have the wherewithal to know a little bit about what's going behind the scenes? So I can give you an example whereby we had an editor who is looking at algorithms to actually do searching on our databases. And the editor wasn't very technically savvy, and they set up a little rule which said, search for the occurrence of the word music in this particular field. And if the person was really popular, then make their name come up at the top of the result set in a search. So the trouble is, Nietzsche did write some music, and he came up as a top classical musician. Now, the mistake was really made both by the developer and the editor, that if the editor had had more technical savvy, she would have known that the way in which the algorithm worked wasn't paying attention to the type of person. And she'd have known that just because somebody's got stamped with music doesn't make them an important musician. Unfortunately, computers are pretty stupid. And so the flags for me are when somebody's like, oh, yeah, I had to do a wedding list. And my mother sent me a list, and my mother-in-law sent me a list, and they were both massive, and they both had, you know, addresses, and I had to merge the two. That's a classic problem that editors have to deal with all the time. Some work they're commissioning comes in on a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet doesn't have the same fields as the fields they're trying to create, so they have to figure out a way of actually migrating the things across. So I hope that's helpful.
I think agree, staying very much aware of the tools of the day and trying to learn them, HTML, whatever, other skills you need to create the files and the platforms that are the tools of digital communication. So there's many. So I would just say try to identify the kind of place you want to work and what tools they're using and try and learn them in addition to the specifics they've already given.
Yes, I don't have too much to add to that other than, I mean, in addition to HTML, I'd say XML is, probably one of the other key, skills in your toolbox you want to have. But much as Stephen was saying, a lot of it is being familiar enough to know how to talk to the developers if you're not doing the development yourself, being able to talk to them and say, these are the requirements that we need to be able to meet, and then working with them, being able to recognize enough of the code to say, okay, I think I understand what you're doing. You don't have to be able to do it yourself, but just be able to be comfortable with it, I think, is really the key. Yeah.
Okay, so I think, Steve, you gave me the opportunity to make one more plug, which is for my second favorite topic after networking, third, after networking and using your career services office is LinkedIn. And you heard it right here. They're looking on LinkedIn for you. So if you are not on LinkedIn, I highly recommend that you be on LinkedIn. I know that I looked up every panelist on LinkedIn, and I look up people all the time. It used to be in the very beginning, at least where maybe because I'm in the career field, that it was sort of a tip-off that somebody might be out there looking. And it's not like that at all anymore. It's where professionals go to make connections and be parts of groups and be able to provide a profile that tells a little bit about themselves. And I do work with people on their LinkedIn profiles as well, just to make sure it communicates the message that you're looking to communicate. I'm happy to link to any student or alum who would like on LinkedIn. So if you look for me, you can link to me. And we have a Masters in Publishing LinkedIn group for this program where sometimes I feel like I'm dominating the LinkedIn group because I post a lot, but I post job information. I just posted an internship today in the jobs section. I post career articles, I post events. I mean, this event was obviously posted in there a number of times. I post things about events that are going on in the GW campus, and there's overlap here. This program overlaps with other things that go on at GW. You're not very isolated like, say, a landscape design might be, where there's not a lot of landscape design going on at GW outside of that one program. There's all kinds of media and communications and all kinds of stuff that you might want to be a part of. There was just a Media and Communications Expo a couple of weeks ago, and if you're on GWork, you see that stuff pop up. LinkedIn is a place where a lot of that information goes. And also, if you're looking to talk to people who are doing work that you're interested in doing, our alums are a huge resource for you. Many, many of them belong to this group. You can join it. You can see their profiles. You can send them a message and say, hey, I'm in cohort whatever, and I see that you are in cohort whatever, and I'd love to talk to you about the work that you're doing. This looks like something that I might really be interested in finding out a lot more about. That is a way to find people to talk to. That's the point of LinkedIn. So you should be on it. If you're concerned about privacy issues and things, I can talk you through that piece. But it's a huge tool, one that I wish I'd had back in the day.
Recruiters are recruiting on LinkedIn nowadays too, so in addition to the job postings, for certain positions, I'll specifically just go to LinkedIn before I even post a job to see people I've networked with. So like you had mentioned, just to go on to that, everyone should be on LinkedIn.
We do LinkedIn before we do it. It's cheaper, faster. The resumes we get back are higher quality. In a sense, it's self-disqualifying. If you're not on LinkedIn, then you're probably not somebody we want to talk to anyway. So it's nice and simple.
So that's about the strongest statement I think
Yeah.
I've heard. And
Yeah.
that's good to know. This is why we do these things. Because I talk about it all the time, and then people say, oh, you're probably getting a commission from them. And I say, oh, yeah,
There's also a really nice secret about LinkedIn, which is that you have to make it neutral. So I can take a look at your resume, and I take a look at LinkedIn, and I can see how you've altered your resume for my company versus what you've put out generically on LinkedIn. So that gives me a really good read. Have you changed your resume at all? If so, how have you changed it? And is it really speaking to me? Or is it, in fact, at variance with what you're saying in LinkedIn? So on LinkedIn, you'll say, you know, my career wish is to be such and such, and I get a resume and a cover letter which says something completely different, then that gives me, you know, a useful piece of information.
Which side of that coin do you see as being a stronger benefit? Do you want to see people being truthful across the board, or do you want a more tailored resume that isn't exactly reflective of what they had, but how do you know which one is closer to the truth?
That's a great question. You see, I think it seems like, in a sense, we're in a race here to figure out what's true and what's not true. But I would say that, I don't know, 80 to 90% of the people who aren't truthful get found out before they get far down the process. And so I've got in my interview process, I mean, I suppose over my career I've hired 400, 500 people, something like that.
Wow.
I mean, I've always worked for fast growth companies. Last company I worked for, when I joined it was like 45 people. When I left it was like 350. So I've done an awful lot of hiring. So I've got my list of questions. And one of them, for example, is, and I should probably not be telling you this because some of you may be interviewing with me and I don't want it being videoed and everything. But so I'll ask a question, deliberately waiting for you to lie. So I'll say, okay, how good are you with Excel? And you'll say, oh, I'm pretty good. So I'm like, okay, are you familiar with the SUMIF function? So that's a pretty easy function, everybody is. And I'll just keep going, getting, you know, right down to Visual Basic. And sooner or later, I'm pretty sure you won't actually be telling the truth. And the reason I'm doing it is because I want to see that you're actually telling the truth. And I suspect all other employers do the same thing. And in fact, the way to answer the question is simply to say, actually, you know, I can only go thus far with Excel. I'm like, cool, this person's truthful. Because the question wasn't really about Excel. It was actually about, can you tell the truth or not? And there are many, many iterations like that. Sometimes I have had people come in and they're just great. They're like, you know what? This job, I thought it was this. It's not really what I'm thinking. I'm not sure I'm interested. And suddenly I get interested in the person because this is somebody who's actually got, you know, some balls. They know what they want. They're actually going to engage with me, you know, not as an employer, but as an individual. And I'm like, so let's transpose that to something in work. Wow, so they'll be in a production meeting, and you know, the issue is they can't do what production needs as an editor. Production's asking the editor to do a ton of copywriting or whatever. And they're going to say, oh, okay, I'll do that. Because they don't have the balls to say, actually, I know you're a lot more senior than me, but I'm not going to be able to do that on time. And the people that in the interview said, you know what, that particular line of questioning or that particular issue, if that's what you're looking for, that's not me, is the same as when they're in work and there's some task that they can't do or won't do. And I've just had concrete proof that even in very tough, high-pressure situations, they're going to give an honest answer. So I love the question because for every time you think that you can get away, sure, there's a 5 or 10% embellishment. But the moment you start getting into deep water, the couple of times that I have had people get through the net, it's been even worse. They've taken the job, they may have moved, they've left their previous job, they've committed to the company, and a few months into it, turns out that they can't do what they said they're going to do. And then we're both pissed off because we've basically got a termination situation, and they've got something on their resume, and they've wasted a lot of time and effort. It's just a lot easier to be honest.